Hello, good morning, dear students. I'm Avik from YourLiteraryWorld, and from today, we are starting our journey of English literature. English literature is predominantly starting with Old English literature. Just because we are saying English literature, it does not mean only the British literature that we are going to deal with. We are going to incorporate the elements of the Scottish literature, at the same time, the Irish literature. So, English literature is equals to English literature, which is predominantly the British literature, as well as the Scottish literature and Irish literature. Rather than providing any segregated videos from every single thing, which is going to create more amounts of confusion, we are going to deal with the amalgamation of these three things. The first lecture is going to be based on the Old English literature. That is your foundation if you are preparing for CUET PG or UGC NET examination. This video is going to be the crucial one that is going to give you a huge amount of marks in the examination, and all the concepts related to Old English literature is going to be cleared. I am using 3 slides which are going to be provided in the description box, at the same time in the comment section. If you want to just join the mock test related to Old English or any kind of literature that we are dealing with every single day by providing you daily tasks, then you can simply join the Telegram group where you are going to get huge amount of knowledge, and every single day you can just go for the examination of the mock test, the task provided, and you can just finish it and appear for the examination. So these are the 3 slides that I'm going to use right here, right now, the same slides that you are going to get also. So without any further delay, let's start our Old English literature. So the first point in the slide is timeline 449 to 1066 AD. If you are preparing for the CUET PG examination, you're going to confront these kind of questions that they're going to ask you. The Old English literature is starting from, so it is some books it is saying 449, sometimes it is 440, sometimes it is 448, but if you go for the standardized version, it is 449 to 1066 AD. 1066 AD, Battle of Hastings, the Norman conquest. All right, so it is in 449 to 1066 AD. It is the Old English literature. After 1066 AD, we are going to go for the Anglo-Norman literature that we are going to deal separately, but not in this video. Second point is synonyms. If you are going for the NET examination or CUET PG examination, they are going to ask you these types of tricky questions. It is not only the Old English literature, but it is also known as Anglo-Saxon literature. The entire is known as the age of heptarchy. At the same time, it is known as the age of anonymity. Now, Old English literature, as you already know, if you go for the language references, it is the language that we are talking about. If you just try to read the books in the Old English literature, it is very hard to just understand them. Even if you go for the Middle English literature, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales or any kind of work that you're going to pick, they are very hard to read in comparison to modern English literature, obviously. That's the reason it is known as Old English literature. Second is the age of anonymity. Why it is known in that way? If there are total 100 books, for example, just saying, there are 90 books that you're going to find out that's written by a writer which names we cannot find. So the name of the writer is completely missing. Some writers are obviously there, Bede, Caedmon, Cynewulf, King Alfred. These 3-4 names you're going to find out, but most of the cases the names are not there. That is the reason the age is known as the age of anonymity. And another is the age of heptarchy. There are total 3 tribes, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. They were Germanic tribes, the Vikings. They came in England and they conquered England. At the same time, they created their own kingdoms known as the heptarchy, the 7 kingdoms in Anglo-Saxon literature known as the age of heptarchy. So these 3 are Anglo-Saxon age, the age of heptarchy, the age of anonymity, and Old English. These four names that you have to remember specifically for CUET PG examination, not for the NET examination, obviously, but for the factual information, they are going to provide you 4 different points, and you have to understand that which points are going to be crucial. So for that, obviously, UGC NET examination is going to be crucial, but specifically for CUET PG examination, this information is going to be very, very informative. Now, the third point is the 3 tribes invasion. Odd, it was an invitation. Now, there are 2 books, Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum, written by Bede. It was in Latin. In the NET examination, you are going to find out 2 to 3 questions related to the specific original language of that work. That is the reason Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum, the history of the English people, it is English translation, very, very crucial for the NET examination. Specifically CUET PG examination also, you're going to find out questions like that, what kind of language it was, like original language of that work. So in Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum, written by Bede, he says that there are 3 tribes, Angles, not angels, Angles, Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. These 3 tribes came in England, conquered England. At the same, these 3 tribes came in England, conquered England, at the same time created their empire, the 7 kingdoms. But at the same time, if you just go for the another history known as Gilders, the historian, he says that no, they were invited in England. Romans were first there, they conquered England, and when Romans were gone because of the invasion in their country, they need to protect their own country, isn't it true? So the Anglo-Saxons and Jews, they were invited, the people of England, they came in England, they protected England. So these kind of two accounts, because these kind of two historical definitions we have related to the Anglo-Saxons and Jews. So these three tribes, they're coming from the Germanic tribes, they're specifically Vikings. There is a web series you can watch if you want to, Vikings, that is very, very great, and Ragnar Lothbrok, the name of the person, that is very fascinating there. So these things that you have to remember, the specific different ages, the beginning and the ending, and these three tribes, the invitations or the invasion. All right. Now the fourth is their cultural fusion and language. As I was saying, that it was first Roman who were conquered England. All right. So when Romans were there, the Christianization can be seen. So Christianization is not something which is new element by the arrival of Saint Augustine the Great. We are finding these kind of things. No, when Romans came in England, the Christianization can be seen. But when these heathens, these pagans, specifically Anglo-Saxons and Jews, the non-Christians, they came in England, they fused their own culture with the Christian culture that was existed there already. All right. So they came with the heroic tradition. If you just go for the greatest work in the Old English literature, the Beowulf, you're going to find out that it is the mixture of pagan and heathen, which is non-Christian element, at the same time the Christian element. We're going to talk about these things, but not now. Just basic understanding that is needed. So first it was Latin influence, and then it was the Scandinavian influence that we can find out. If you just go to the Instagram of Your Literary World, you're going to find out the details regarding the Latin influence, the French influence, the Scandinavian influence at the same time. All right, so you need not to worry. So go for the Scandinavian influence there in the Your Literary World Telegram channel, or if you just simply go for the Instagram channel, you're going to find out there is a highlight known as language and linguistics, and you're going to find out the written format there. Now, when it comes to the specifically Latin language and the influence of Latin, when Romans went to just save their own country, the re-Christianization began in England. It was St. Augustine in 597 AD, the re-Christianization happened in England. So if you're going for the CUET PG examination or NET examination, you're going to find out this kind of factual information very handy. They're going to ask you that re-Christianization began in by whom. So 597 AD, St. Augustine, the re-Christianization began in England. Now there are some words which are important. For example, if you're going for the Latin influence, the words which are related to schools and colleges came. So school, master, these two words specifically are coming from Latin influence. So all the scholarly things, they are related to Latin influence. Remember that. Just like if I am talking about any kind of cuisine, मतलब खाने का जो वहाँ पे सामग्री है, वो आता है फ्रेंच से, ठीक है? भुक्कड़ थे वो लोग, obviously not, but still. So in terms of Latin influence, you're going to find out the words like schools and master, these words are coming from the Latin influence. And just like I was saying that when Romans were there, the Christianization already happened. So churches were also very influential figure in terms of Latin influence. So from Latin, the word church, monk, pastor, priest, angel, candle, like 5-6 words are very fascinating, and they came from the Latin influence. These things that you have to remember, and some words related to kitchen also came from the Latin influence. And another thing, which is suffixes. In the examination, you're going to find out questions related to language. That's the reason I'm emphasizing the suffixes like ism and ation, tion, son and ism. These suffixes came in through the Latin influence. Say for example, nationalism, nationalism. So ism, that ism suffix, it is coming from the Latin influence. ITION, shun, nation, NATION, station, STATION, that shun, TION, it is also coming from the Latin influence. So two suffixes, ism and shun, TION, these two suffixes are coming from the Latin influence. So that is the end of the Latin influence in the first place. Now proceed from this final point. Danes invasion in the 9th century. Now that is also very fascinating. If you go for the UGC NET examination, PYQs, you're going to find out the reference of the Danes invasion in 19th century, possibly 1875 AD the invasion happened. So Danes were also another tribes which are coming from like Vikings, just like Anglo-Saxons and Jutes. They came in England when King Alfred was the ruler. He fought with Danes and he won. So that is the end of our first slide. Now let's move towards the second slide. I believe that you can understand whatever I said. These are the 5 points through which these first part of the lecture are based on. So I believe it's going to be very useful for the examination of NET and CUET PG. Now let's move on to the second slide. Now, in the second slide, we have literature production. First is manuscripts. You're going to find out these kind of questions, that how many manuscripts are there. There are total 4 manuscripts. Exeter manuscript, Beowulf manuscript, Junius manuscript, and Vercelli manuscripts. These 4 manuscripts are going to be important in the examination. You're going to find out that they are going to ask you that how many languages are there and how many manuscripts are there. In terms of manuscripts, there are 4 manuscripts, and in terms of languages also, there are total 4 languages. So what are the languages that we can find out? The first language is West Saxon. This language is known as the language of literature. Second is American, third is Northumbrian, and fourth is Gentis. So these 4 languages are useful. All right, so 4 languages, 4 manuscripts that we can confront: American, Gentis, Northumbrian, West Saxon. West Saxon language is known as the language of literature through which King Alfred produced huge amount of literature. All right, so in the examination, if they're going to ask you what is the language of literature and 4 languages are going to be given, then West Saxon is your primary and the first choice. Do not go for the other options. Now let's go for the books. Now this part is going to be dealing with the books which we do not have any kind of writer. So first is Widsith, Widsith. Now what is the meaning of the Widsith? Widsith means far wanderer or far traveler. बहुत दूर दूर तक वो वहाँ पे घूम के आए हैं and उसके बाद उन्होंने literature produce किया था. ठीक है, so this is known as Widsith's meaning, far wanderer or far traveler. And Widsith is also known as the earliest, or you can say the oldest Old English literature work. There is a confusion that I'm going to deal with later. So just remember these 2 points which are very useful for Widsith. First is it is considered as the oldest book in the Old English literature, and second it is known as far wanderer or far traveler. There is a word which is known as scop, scop, known as the far wanderer or far traveler, and it is in oral tradition. Okay, मुंह से बोला जा रहा है, लोग सुन रहे हैं, वो धीरे धीरे बाहर जा रहे हैं. And even in the Widsith we have the reference of the Oriental world. Okay, so these things that you have to be very careful of. Now the Beowulf, if you're going for the Old English literature, after the language part, which you have to be very careful, is with the Beowulf, because in the NET examination, or if you go for the CUET examination, you're going to find questions related to Beowulf. The problem here is that most of the cases students just read that Beowulf, this is the epic, in the form of epic if you go for the genre, and it is caning and alliteration can be found. That is the end of the story. No, it is not the end of the story. You're going to find out different informations which are very crucial. Just like in the in the December examination of 2025 NET, they asked the questions regarding King Alfred. Now, so most of the cases students were like, ये कैसे हो सकता है? But they asked, that's the reason. If you are just investing only 1 day related to Old English literature, उसके बाद भी मैं notes तो वहाँ पे दे ही दिया हूँ Old English के. So like I don't think you're going to find any kind of problem in the examination, and you're not going to confront. So Beowulf, it is considered as the longest and oldest work. In terms of longest, it is considered as oldest. Remember that. But if you ask me that Widsith came first or Beowulf came first, it is undoubtedly Widsith. Widsith is considered as the oldest work. But if they ask you oldest, longest, then Beowulf, not Widsith. All right. And Beowulf is divided in 2 parts. The first part, it is the monster, the fight between monster, where the monster came in Heorot, the great hall, and he was eating different people. Okay, cannibalism, you can say, although I cannot say cannibalism because he was a monster. And in the second part, we are going to confront the idea that Beowulf became the king and he confronted with the huge dragon. And the dragon, you can say the idea of dragon can be seen in everywhere. All right, so these 2 parts are very crucial for the examination. But is that enough? Like if I'm just going for this basic summary of Beowulf, that is the end of the story? No, you're going to find out some different information in the Beowulf which are going to be crucial. Say for example, the 2 names, Wiglaf and Arnford. These 2 names are very important. First is Arnford, you're going to find out. So if you just read the basic summary of Beowulf, it was like Beowulf came because the king Hrothgar, who created a great hall known as Heorot, he was having huge amount of trouble to face the monster Grendel. And Grendel has a power that you cannot harm Grendel by any kind of weapon. You can just simply just knock him out. There is no problem, but no weapons are going to be useful against him. He has that amount of power. All right, so you can say kind of divinely blessed in terms of any kind of weapon. That's the reason that everyone was afraid of him. That's the simple reason, and that's the reason Beowulf was invited by Hrothgar, and he was also the king of Hrothgar. So Beowulf came, Beowulf fought with Grendel, and जैसे भीम ने किया था ना वहाँ पे कौरव के साथ, उन्होंने हाथ को उखाड़ लिया, पाँव को पूरी तरीके से उखाड़ लिया. Beowulf did the same thing. When he faced with the monster Grendel, he simply tore the arm of Grendel in the first place. And वहाँ पे जो hall था, Heorot, in that hall you can find out the hand is hanging of Grendel, and Grendel obviously escaped. And there when he tried to just chase Grendel has been stopped because he had no weapon in the first place. And there was a person known as Alfred, and he says that I know that you are not that amount of great that people are considering you. But there's some scrimmage between them. I am great. No, you are not, that kind of thing. But at the end, they resolve. But in between, there are some informations which are important. When I'm talking about Grendel the monster, he was a descendant of Cain. Who was Cain? Cain and Abel, they're two brothers. They were the son of Adam and Eve, our first father and mother. So Adam and Eve का दो वहाँ पे बेटे थे. वहाँ पे एक था Cain, दूसरा था वहाँ पे Abel. ठीक है? And Cain killed Abel. And if you just go through the summary, you're going to find out Anfert also killed his another relative. Oh, it is obviously not brother, but he killed the relative and ascended to the throne. So there is a kind of reference of Anfert is also a kind of close descendant to Cain, who has a connection to Grendel, if you just go through that amount of direction. All right. So, but in the examination, you're going to be asked that in these 4-5 names, who was a descendant of Cain, and the obvious answer is Grendel, who was completely unharmed, unscathed by any kind of weapon. So these things that you have to be careful of. Okay, so then after that, Grendel and Beowulf. So by the way, Grendel died. All right. So because of that revenge, Grendel mothers came. So you can say that Beowulf is divided in, if you go for technical details, it's like 2 parts. But if you go for the storyline, it is like 3 parts. First is Grendel versus Beowulf. Second is Grendel's mother versus Beowulf, where Grendel's mother was not immune to anything, but she was the person who provided all amount of struggle to Beowulf. Beowulf का उतना प्रॉब्लम हुआ नहीं था ग्रेंडल के साथ, जितना प्रॉब्लम लड़ाई में वहाँ पे हुआ था ग्रेंडल के मदर के साथ. All right. And Anfer on that time provided sword, which did not work, and finally Grendel's mother was killed by Beowulf. That is the first part. Second part is Beowulf was the king and he confronted the dragon, and obviously it is after 50 years, and in that fight Beowulf was mortally wounded. Everyone escaped when he was fighting with Grendel, when he was fighting with the monster, but it was only one person who known as Wiglaf. He was there, he remained with him. At the end, he became the king after Beowulf died. So Beowulf began with the idea of funeral. Everyone was killed by Grendel, and finally Beowulf was ended by the death of Beowulf. It was also the part of funeral. So ending and beginning both are part of sadness, or elegy, you can say. So elegiac ending, you can say. All right. So these things that you have to be careful of. Now, after going for these information, you're going to find out that in the examination they might ask you that who translated Beowulf. So Beowulf was translated by Seamus Heaney in 1999. All right, very famous writer. We are going to find out many questions related to Seamus Heaney in the NET examination. So Beowulf translated by Seamus Heaney, and after that J.R.K. Tolkien in 2014 2014 में उनका वहाँ पे translation आया था, prose translation. So two translators were there. One was Seamus Heaney and second was J.R.K. Tolkien. These informations are needed even if you are like the translation is not important for CUET PG. The entire summary is important, but if you're going for the NET examination, these informations are going to be crucial. Now there is another thing, alliteration and caning. These two literary features can be seen in the Old English literature. So what is alliteration? When the repetition of the consonant sound, if you need to go for the phonetics, if you want to understand consonant sounds and vowel sound, there's a difference between consonant and consonant sound. All right, vowel and vowel sound. So when there is the initial repetition of the consonant sound, this is known as alliteration. अगर पहले ही एकदम वर्ड के बिगिनिंग में अगर वहाँ पे कोई रिपीटेशन हो गया है कोई साउंड का, यहाँ पे भी रिपीटेशन, सेकंड वर्ड में भी रिपीटेशन, थर्ड में भी रिपीटेशन बिगिनिंग में, दैट इज नोन एज alliteration. All right. Now what is the definition of consonants? Consonants does not happen in the beginning mostly. It is happening in the middle or in the ending. So middle is same for the 5 words and ending is same for the 5 words. That is consonant. But if the beginning is same for the 5 words in one sentence or 2 sentences, that is known as alliteration. All right. This is the first example, first definition of rhetorics and prosody that you need to remember. Second, in the examination, you're going to find out the word caning, K-E-N-N-I-N-G. When it comes to Old English literature, like, look, we have many words right now, all right? We can use denotation, we can use connotation, but when it comes to the Old English literature, the range of the words were limited. As a consequence, they used some different words, you can say 2 words, which are referring to one word in our modern English. Say for example, if I say sea, S-E-A-C, all right? Or maybe voyage, V-O-Y-A-G-E. You know how they are going to define the term voyage? They're going to say the whale road. Whale, बहुत बड़ा जो वो whale रहता है, whale and road. So whales are in the sea. So that's the reason it is sea road, which is voyage, journey. All right, this is how they referred into that thing. Now there is also another very interesting information for UGC NET examination. The word Beowulf, B-E-O-W-U-L-F. The word Beowulf is also caning, K-E-N-N-I-N-G. bee hunter. Beowulf means bee hunter. Now who hunts bees? Bear. भालू जो है. So bear hunts bees equals to Beowulf. So Beowulf equals to bee hunter equals to bear. Beowulf had the strength of a bear. That's the reason he just tore the arm of Grendel in the first place. इसीलिए हाथ वो पूरी तरीके से उखाड़ लिया है ना. bear जैसा उसका वहाँ पे power था. So these things that you have to be careful of. Now the term Beowulf equals to bee hunter equals to bear, it is given by the famous philologist Henry Sweet. When we are going to talk about linguistics, and if you are going for the mock test, you are going to find out his name, Henry Sweet. So Beowulf equals to Canning equals to bee hunter equals to bear equals to Henry Sweet. That is the end of Beowulf. So two works that we finished. One is Widsith, second is Beowulf. The third is Dream of the Rood. If they ask you any questions after Beowulf and after language, this is going to be Dream of the Rood. Now, what is the meaning of the rood? R-O-O-D, rood. It means cross. Net examination, they have asked questions. The meaning of the word rood. Rood means cross. And that cross is of Christ cross. You are going to find out a 3-lined quotation there. And this is the quotation from Dream of the Rood. All right, let me just tell you the quotation. I was struck away. This is provided by Rood. Rood यहाँ पे बोल रहा है यहाँ पे. I was struck away, dragged off by strong enemies, mankind's brave king. He came to climb over me. I dared not to break or bend aside, dared not to lean from the truth. All right. So ये वहाँ पे line है. So root is the representation of Christ cross, is the representation of truth. ठीक? That is the basic understanding that is needed. They are not going to ask you more than that. Now, there is other works also that is going to be asked. So there are many elegies which can be seen. One is Deor's Lament, D-E-O-R, apostrophe S, Lament, L-A-M-E-N-T. There is a refrain, one repetitive sentence everywhere. His sorrow will pass away, so will mine. उसका जो वहाँ पे दुख था वो तो चला ही गया है. With time, समय के साथ मेरा भी दुख वहाँ पे चला जाएगा. So his sorrow will pass away, so will mine. ये है Deor's Lament. Okay. Husband's message, wife's lament, the wanderer, the seafarer. Now here the name of the work, the seafarer. Ezra Pound also wrote the same work known as the seafarer. 80% are same, 20% are different. And in Old English literature, the seafarer was someone who was hunted by the sea. He was very much of, you can say, adversely affected by the sea in the first place. But there was a lust to go to the sea again. जिस चीज में तुम वहाँ पे छूट रहे हो वो चीज तुमको वहाँ पे पुकार रहा है, that kind of thing. Okay, so sea was like, sea, he did not like the sea in the first place, but he was habituated so much that he wanted to go to the sea again. All right, so this is the classic example, classic summary of the seafarer. So one brother seafarer, the husband's lament, the wife's complaint, Deor's lament, these kind of work that you have to remember of. Also, there is another work which is known as the ruin, R-U-I-N. There is no need to remember everything related to the ruin, but there is a thing which you remember. In the ruin, the name of the city was Bath, B-A-T-H. Why it is important? The wife of Bath reference. That's the reason I'm saying that that work is crucial, not for the CUET PG examination, but for the NET examination. All right. So Bath equals to the ruin. That is the second slide. Now go for the third slide. King Alfred and others. Total 6 pointers we have here, not only related to King Alfred, but there are also other works. So before we go for the King Alfred, let's talk about Bede. For Bede, if you are going for the NET examination, remember that if they are asking you that set these books in chronological order, the first work is going to be Widsith. This is the oldest work. Second is going to be Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum, the history of English people, written by Bede, B-E-D-E. And third book was Beowulf, B-E-O-W-U-L-F. All these books are coming under the Old English belt. All right, so these information is related because in the NET examination, they have asked questions related to the chronology of different works where you can find out Beowulf at least 2 times in the NET examination. That is the reason I am saying that if they're going to go for the Old English classification, what you're going to do. That's the reason. Widsith, Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum, and Beowulf. All right, these 3 works. This is the 3 works chronology. Now, when it comes to Bede, Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum, this is the Latin title and written in Latin, and then after English. All right, so this is the only information that is needed for Bede. Already I talked about Anglo-Saxons and Jews reference related to Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum. Bede says that Anglo-Saxons and Jews, the 3 Germanic tribes, came in England in order to conquer, which later divided in another idea that no, they were provided by the historian Gildas. All right, so this is the thing that is only needed when it comes to Bede. Now let's go for King Alfred. So his title, he is known as Shepherd of English. All right. So Shepherd of English is the title of King Alfred. The question here is why? First of all, when Danes invaded England, he fought against them. He defended England. He was the Anglo-Saxon king also. Isn't it true? West Saxon language he promoted. So that was the reason he is known as Shepherd. Shepherd means जो protect करता है. Christ, the shepherd of mankind. If you go for the reference of the second coming of W.B.Yeats, turning and turning to the white ninja, the foghorn cannot hear the falconer. Just like that, the shepherd here is the Christ. And like Old English literature, the King Alfred was like the Christ here. He saved all the England from the Danes invasion, although Danes provided incalculable amount of damage in the bosom of the England, but still he created a kind of resistance, and Danes at the end defeated. This is the first, that is, he's known as the Shepherd of English. Second is that when Danes people invaded England, they were destroying everything, all sources of knowledge. And most of the cases, all sources of knowledge are related to church. So churches were completely dismantled, decimated, devastated. All right, जड़ से उन्होंने उसको उखाड़ लिया जो भी churches वहाँ पे mostly थे. And just the reason all the manuscripts, all the books related to literature, they were specifically Latin, cause scholarly knowledge plus churchly people, they were related to Latin. That's the reason almost all the works on the time were in Latin. And when these Danes people came in England, they invaded England, they destroyed almost all the churches. At the same time, they burned all the manuscripts. At the same time, the books also. All right, that's the reason the decline of education can be seen in the reign of King Alfred. Okay, so be careful with the idea. Danes came, Danes conquered, Danes burned, Danes left after being defeated. But that impact can be seen in the Old English literature. People are illiterate, they could not even read by using Latin, and they even couldn't read by just using their own language. खुद का ही लैंग्वेज उनको पता है ही नहीं, तो दूसरों का लैंग्वेज जो लैटिन लैंग्वेज है स्पेसिफिकली वो तो वहाँ पे भूल ही जाओ. ठीक है. That's the reason King Alfred started a kind of mission, you can say, that he wrote in the preface of Cura Pastoralis, written by Pope Gregory. Pastoral clear जो वहाँ पे translation है. ठीक है. King Alfred total 4 translation that is needed. I'm going to talk about it, but not now. Just hold on a bit. So in King Alfred's, he says in the preface of Cura Pastoralis, known as Pastoral Clear. Pastoral Care is a work written by Pope Gregory the Great. It was translated by King Alfred. It was in the Old English language, West Saxon specifically. All right. So he says in the preface that Danes came, Danes conquered, Danes burned everything. As a consequence, we saw the declining features of the literature. And to revive them, we need not Latin, we need specifically the Old English, the English language specifically. Why it was needed on the time? क्योंकि देखो वहाँ पे आ रहा है अब most of the cases the Latin was predominantly based on scholars. Scholars were almost dead on that time. People came and skilled them. So where we are going to find out more scholars? But we can find out more people, those who can understand their own language, their native language. That's the reason King Alfred says that forget about Latin. He's not saying that like go to hell with Latin. वो लात मार के Latin को वहाँ पे भेज नहीं रहा है कहीं पे. He has the respect for Latin in the first place. He restored Latin also. Those scholars on that time, he asked them to like whatever you are doing, you can do it on your own. There is no problem from my side. And even when he translated all his works, he went from one bishop to another bishop. कि सर मैंने ये translate किया है, आप यहाँ पे देख लीजिए. So at the same time, he was at the end dependent to the scholars, the priests on that time, those who were the source of only the Latin language. And obviously King Alfred was also very great in terms of Latin because he was aware of the Latin language, वो जानते थे Latin language को. So after that, he says, let's translate all the works in the English language, because English language, I have the great, you can say, power over it, a dexterity over it, so that I can translate all the works in the English language, and I'm going to ask people to just read in English. So it was the decline of the Latin language, and specifically the Old English language also. And then after that, Latin influence grown a bit, but it was the Old English language which was like skyrocketed. पूरी तरीके से ऊपर ही चला गया. ठीक है? So these informations are needed for the NET examination. So that's the reason that West Saxon language became the language of literature, where he produced specifically the 4 translations. First is Cura Pastoralis, known as Pastoral Clear of Pope Gregory the Great. Second is Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. He translated that work also. Third was Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum. It was by Bede. All right. चौथा वहाँ पे था, मैं नाम वहाँ पे भूल गया, मैं लिख दूंगा. ठीक है. आई फॉरगॉट द नेम ऑफ द फोर्थ ट्रांसलेशन. हिस्टोरिया एग्लिसिस्टिका जेंटिस एंग्लोरम, कूरा पेस्टोरालिस, बोइथियस इज द कंसोलेशन ऑफ फिलोसफी. मैं एक नाम वहाँ पे भूल गया, तो वो वहाँ पे मैं लिख दूंगा. ठीक है. तो दीज 4 ट्रांसलेशन ही जस्ट डिड. So that is the end of King Alfred. Now we have Caedmon, we have Cynewulf. That is the end of the story. So when it comes to Cynewulf, he is considered as the first writer who signed in his work. Autograph दे दिया उसने, not autograph but signature कर दिया उन्होंने कि अरे ये किताब मेरा है, कोई चोरी मत कर लेना, ठीक है, copyright है यहाँ पे. So that is the Caedmon, and second is Cynewulf. That is the Cynewulf, and second is Caedmon. Caedmon was known as the first orally spoken religious writer, Christian religious writer. Okay, so Caedmon was considered as orally spoken first Christian religious writer, and second was Cynewulf. Now there is also another writer. I do not think they are going to ask this kind of question in the examination, but if they ask that what was the name of the first Anglo-Saxon writer, it was Aldhelm, Aldhelm. Aldhelm was considered as the first Anglo-Saxon writer. Okay, बहुत time ले लिया. That is the end of the Old English literature for you and for me and for us also. And if you want to just attend any kind of sessions related to Old English literature, like we have created the Telegram group known as Your Literary World, I'm going to provide link in the description box. At the same time, in the comment section, you can just click the link and you can join. Every single day I provide tasks, not like आज चल रहा है Old English, tomorrow we are going to go for the Victorian literature, and after that we are going to go for the Middle English literature. Not like that. Every single day constructive tasks are provided. Say for example, if I'm reading Old English literature, I'm going to give you the time. Today we are going to deal with Old English literature. These are the writers that you have to follow, and you have to read all those writers. Yes, you can understand it correct. All the writers are going to be given by me. You have to appear for the writers, you have to read for the writers, whatever source that you can collect, and in the mock test with the other students, they are going to find out where you are standing. That is the first thing. And second, I'm going to provide you the personalized guide in the Telegram channel also. अगर कोई यहाँ पे problem है तो obviously you can message, and simply मैं address भी कर देता हूँ वहाँ पे Telegram के message के through. So need not to worry. Now we are starting with romantic literature. Possibly we are going to go for Southey, Blake, Wordsworth, and Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. These four writers that we are going to deal today. Tomorrow possibly Coleridge, Keats, Hazlitt was there. So if you want to join, you can. That is the end of the story for Old English literature. There is nothing that you need except these things. One translation I forgot. I'm extremely sorry for that. मैं वहाँ पे add कर लूँगा. So have a nice day, and if you want to join, you can join, and happy reading. Thank you.